Hello and welcome to the Smells Like Infinite Sadness podcast. I'm your host, Michael Taylor. For those of you who don't know, I run the website, smellslikeinfinitesadness.com. It's a blog covering the best alternative rock from the 80s and 90s up to present day. I'm a proud middle-aged Gen Xer who is still obsessed with the music of his youth and loves to talk about it. So last week, co-host Chris Logan and I delved into bands you either love or hate. Those bands there really is no middle-of-the-road opinion on. You're either all the way in or you're all the way out. Last week we covered the Smashing Pumpkins, the Eagles, the Grateful Dead, Dave Matthews, and Rush. Now, we decided to break up into two installments because we were going in pretty great detail for these bands as far as pros and cons for each. So this week we're going to wrap everything up with part two of bands you either love or hate, and we're going to discuss Radiohead, Metallica, U2, Marilyn Manson, and Slipknot. So get ready to hear our opinions. As always, you can send us a message via Anchor, or you can send us a tweet on Smells Like Sad, letting us know if you agree or disagree with us, if you think we're dead on the money, or think that we're totally misguided. So sit back and enjoy, or get mad, or laugh, or get ready to send us some comments saying why we're right and or wrong. Let's have fun. Well, why don't we go into U2 since you mentioned them? Let's talk about why U2 are one of the biggest bands in the world, yet one of the most divisive bands in the world.
Man, you know, that Bono, it's just a photo opportunity every single time. Whenever he shows up with those like poor kids in Africa, or those kids that he's trying to give like a shirt to in Nicaragua or something like that. What's funny to me, and you and I have shared the same sentiment about it, but he was doing this stuff a long time ago.
Oh yeah, from the beginning.
I mean, he's been doing this practically since like 1983, 84. And apparently it's sort of like, man, I hate to play this card here, but I'm going to. But whenever you hear the political party that says so-and-so is just there for the photo op, exactly what it's turned into. But I will say that Bono's been active in causes since they were kids in Ireland, and now he's at such a different level that he's able to help out people that may not have ever received that sort of help. Whenever they did the Joshua Tree tour last year, I caught him at the show at AT&T Stadium, and he said, "I'd like to thank you all, because if you are a United States taxpayer, you have helped with providing HIV medicine to children in Africa, children, mothers, men in Africa, because of his work with, George W. Bush."
That's right. I remember that. I remember that distinctly.
And he talked about walking into George W. Bush's Oval Office at the time. And if you think about that, what the fuck are you doing there, man?
Yeah, that's.
But he went in with a red pill, a blue pill, and a white pill. And he said, "These three pills are red, white, and blue. And they're 30 cents. If you can commit to providing 30 cents to one child a day for the next year or whatever, then that will help these people who cannot afford this kind of care in Africa." And you know, the guy's a snake charmer, apparently, because he got George Bush on the program, and I think it was longer than a year, but you know, certainly the guy worked his charisma and his magic. And as Americans, we have helped people in Africa receive HIV medication. And I feel pretty good about that.
Well, that's one thing that I don't understand. It's like, why would you be mad at somebody for trying to help somebody? That's,
yeah, exactly.
There's a very
I think the thing that falls through the crack is that he's been doing this for so long. Actually, this isn't just a new thing for them. This has been going on for almost the entirety of their careers. They have been active, whether you want to call it politically active or socially active, it's your own. But they've been active in helping people beyond the band. The Edge helping out kids in New Orleans getting new musical instruments because their schools were, completely wiped out from Katrina. I mean, there's some good stuff going on in that band.
And there's this thing too where it's like, you're supposed to, even you hear people like the Gallagher brothers from Oasis, who I begrudgingly love because they're hilarious put down artists, but they're always railing on Bono or whoever. But they're always like, well, you shouldn't go around. I'm like, well, I don't think he's just going around saying this so he get on TV. I think he's going around saying it so he can get other people's attention. When you've got that bully pulpit, you can use it and reach a wider audience than if you're just doing it while you're lonesome. I think that's really, he's not like he's like sitting here hogging, he's doing campaigns that are trying to get more people involved. So I think that's the biggest misconception. It's like, why would you, idea of begrudging somebody for charity it was such an 80s thing too. The whole Wall Street and Gordon Gekko kind of Ronald Reagan. There was such like such a nasty backlash to charity in the 80s that I remember distinctly. And I think that, that kind of bled over to their whole career, And I think that, Bono has always been like, whatever. And the other thing, assumption about Bono that people are like, oh, he's got no sense of humor. And that's so not true. It's like, if you listen, I heard him on an interview with Howard Stern last year, and he was hilarious. I mean, he was so funny. So, I mean, it's like, he's got a very good sense of humor. I mean, I think that, he's just a fascinating character. And, I think that really is like the main reason that people give U2 a hard time. But I can't say I'm a massive. I know you're like a U2 fan. I consider myself a solid.
I went to Nashville this year to go see them. So I mean, because it wasn't getting any closer. I tried to go see them in St. Louis, but they canceled the St. Louis show because of some white cop had gotten the free pass for shooting a black guy.
That's right.
There were tanks in the street, whatever. I mean, just that kind of bullshit. But, you two made the right decision. Just call it off, and we'll see you next time. I ain't mad. I got to visit Nashville. Hey.
U2 are kind of they're a strange band because it's like they have a very simple sound. It's not overly complex, but it's so big.
Right.
They used to call that, even they called that back then, that was like the thing, the big music. That's what they call like U2 and Simple Minds and all those bands. But U2 were the ones that, they made the long haul because they were able to kind of grab different elements of like, some like American soul, they added some industrial stuff. They've really tried everything, and it hasn't always worked, but and of course in latter years they've I haven't really been fond of U2 stuff for pretty much ever since All That You Can't Leave Behind. That was like the last album that I really really liked, but they're still. And also, I think for a lot of, I always put things in perspective for people. It's like, if you grew up after the 80s, if you were born in the 90s or whatever, it's kind of like when you see Star Wars for the first time on TV. It's like, it's not the same thing like when we got to see Star Wars in 1977. You know what I mean? It's like U2 they were a true phenomenon. It was it was basically like those were like the Beatles of the 80s. They really were. I mean, they were huge, and it was almost like, they felt like an overnight success, even though they've been around for a while, because it was the way they took over with the Joshua Tree was just like so massive. And I think that's why the fans love them, is just because there's, there is a spiritual dimension to that group that I think that feeds people. I'm not religious, but I can appreciate that what they tap into. And of course, the Edge's guitar playing is so unique.
I put their Day Zero at the Live Aid show. Whenever they just knocked it out of the park for Live Aid.
Yeah, that they were. Along with
Queen. I think that was. Yeah, I know that right now it gets a lot of Queen pub, but they were. I think they were within 2 or 3 bands of each other that day. Because I remember watching it, and of course, I already knew U2 because of like Sunday Bloody Sunday, and Two Hearts Beat as One, and New Year's Day. Those songs that you heard on just regular rock radio, they were being played. They weren't in high rotation, but finally, Unforgettable Fire comes out, and Prop is starting to get a little bit more airplay. Really, I guess that was the biggest song off that record that would have been on regular rock radio. Mm-hmm. But then they play Live Aid to a worldwide audience like that, and it was I think that was the catapult. And at that point, I'm sure they sold a ton of copies of Unforgettable Fire that summer, and then people just waited to get their hands on Joshua Tree. And of course that was it. Their lives were completely changed.
That U2 one of those bands that they're like people fall in love with certain periods of that group. You've got the 80s fans, you got the 90s fans. Those are the two. Some people didn't really get with them until Octane Baby. Some really came in on the Joshua Tree, and so there's a lot of like, well, they suck now. They used to be great. They didn't get good till then, and Joshua Tree's better. Octane Baby's better. There's such it caused such debate, but I think that's only because they've done so much different stuff, and they've had some stumbles. You've had your Rattle and Hum was definitely a weird move that but that was an odd one. But I mean, there's a lot more that worked that didn't work. I could find stuff on that I can look. Like Pop. There's an overwhelming sense that Pop is not that great of a record. I'm still a fan of it, but I mean that's just me. I'm an all decade U2 fan that would love to see them do if they said, hey, we're playing Pop in its entirety on this tour, sign me up. Well, I think there's also
I'll go to that.
I think there's also this thing where like critics wait for like one album that's got maybe not quite as strong as the others. Like, this is the one we're going to finally bring them down. We're going to attack them for Pop, and it's going to be, it's like every band's got to get that one album, but that they get reamed over. And for U2, it was Pop. That was like the, but there's still some really good songs on there.
It was. Yeah, there's some great stuff on it, and I'm not going to turn into like a Pop apologist segment, but yeah, I mean, altogether, U2 have been doing what they're doing now for a really long time, and if you don't like them, then that's fine, but you're wrong. And I put that one in stone.
Why don't we just go on to Metallica, which are kind of similar in that regard, as far as a band that has such a long career that people have so
very similar
different opinions. So why do people like Metallica? What would you say are Metallica's greatest strengths?
Well, I mean, of course, we can all go with those first. I'll give you 4 albums. Is that right? 4?
You got Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Justice for All.
Master of Puppets and Justice. 5. Yeah, I mean, I guess, you know what? Let me go ahead and throw in the Black Album, because I mean I'm not going to fool myself and say I don't like the Black Album, because I do like the Black Album. There's some great stuff on there. It's just not until they decided to as you might say, cut their hair.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what was going on at the time. You know,
It was
I'm not sure what was really happening internally with the band. You know,
because I think what people like about Metallica, you know, in a sense, is that first off, is their energy. They're a very high energy act. They've got great riffs, but I think what made Metallica so, you know, so exciting at the time is that, you know, we were in this kind of hair metal phase where it was just constant cheese rock. You turn it on MTV, that hard rock is kind of, you know, was in a bad place. And then here comes this band that you've got a fusion of like punk rock and metal, which was, you know, you'd seen some of that before in certain bands, you know, obviously like Samhain or Motorhead. But Metallica were the first bands that really were able to kind of give it, you know, this facelift and just really, it was all about the speed and the aggression. And like Rush, it was not songs that were all about like getting laid and getting high. They were like politically minded. A lot of it was like literature based off of stuff like, you know, H.P. Lovecraft or Johnny Get Your Gun. I mean, there was a very literate aspect to them, which made them different from a lot of metal bands who were more just like, you know, but they were, you know, they were partiers, but they you know, they could think, you know, they weren't just stupid butt rock. And I think that's what made those
right.
made those first 4 albums so powerful, right? But then I think when you talk about what people hate Metallica, is really with Metallica, it's not that they hate all Metallica. What they hate is what we're getting into, which is when they shifted from, you know, the Black Album was kind of like the interlude. You know, Black Album, I really enjoyed it when it first came out. I liked it a lot. I was playing it all the time.
Yeah.
But looking back on it, you know, I was like, it wasn't as strong for me, song for song, as the earlier stuff. But Bob Rock produced it. It made them a shit ton of money. And then they went and tried to kind of follow in the groove of like American alternative rock and post grunge. And we got the Load album, which was, oh man, I mean, that I'll never forget watching that. I'll never forget on MTV watching that Until It Sleeps video and going, what the holy hell is this? It's one of the worst.
What happened?
Not only is the song bad, the video is atrocious. I mean, they're all wearing makeup and it's such a disaster. And it was like so lackluster. And the whole album was like not really many good riffs. It was kind of blown. Right. And from that point on, they really kind of, you know, for a long, long time, Metallica were getting kind of stuck in this second gear boogie rock stuff. And it was all Bob Rock, all Bob Rock. And, you know, I like Bob Rock
all the time.
You know, I like Sonic Temple to an extent. I think it was kind of a come down from Love and Electric, but, you know, he's got his strengths, but he really kind of, I think, neutered that band. And I think they kind of enjoy playing it safe. I think one reason they did it, and this is just my opinion, but I think, you know, those first 4 albums are not, you know, easy to play necessarily. I mean, I play guitar. I play some Metallica songs, and a lot of them are hard. I mean, you got to really be on it. You know, it's very, very fast. It could, you know, like Blackened or Master of Puppets. You know, it's not impossible to play, but it's really fast. It's really precise. And I think maybe they enjoyed doing stuff like the Black Album or Low because it's much easier to play. I mean, they're very, you know, they're much easier, much hookier, more simplistic. And I think maybe for a songwriting aspect, it was just like a nice break, not have to be going, you know, 90 miles an hour down the fretboard all the time. But then you get Saint Anger, which was, you know, their worst album. It's just an unholy mess. And you think that all hope is lost. But then, you know, they finally started to re-embrace their old sound on, what was the name of the album that Rick Rubin produced? Death Magnetic, which was not a great album.
Death Magnetic.
Yeah. Not a great album, but
the Rick Rubin produced record.
Yeah,
it's not solid,
but better.
But I thought it was heading in the right direction for sure.
And their last album, Hardwired to Self-Destruct, that was in 2016. Hardwired to Self-Destruct, and that I stand by. That's a good album. I thought that's their best album they've done since the Black Album, in my opinion. That was like
really
finally. It's not not great. It's not going to like blow you away or change your life, but it was some solid songs. They were back to their heavy, some fast stuff. Even the slower stuff I didn't mind. It just seemed like they're finally kind of shaking the cobwebs off. It's a little more energetic, a little more kind of a throwback to their old stuff, and I enjoy that one. So they're winning me over.
That's an album that I skipped. Like, I haven't even listened to it. It's been out for 2 years.
Yeah, you should check it out. See what you think. I mean, like I say, don't go expecting Master of Puppets Part 2 or anything like that. But it's for a bunch of guys. Bunch of guys who've been coasting for a long, long time. That's
right.
It's an improvement. But the other reason for we changed tactics that Metallica got so hated for a lot of reasons was because of Napster. And this was not musically related at all, but it was all Lars Ulrich going to court. I think about this now, and I'm like, if he had only done it differently, because what happened was Napster was just getting popular. People were like, oh, I can get all this music for free, and it was great. And here he comes. He wants to stop. They were like, no, don't do that. That sucks. We're all, in our 20s and, sick of paying $20 a CD. That sounds great. Cut / forward to 2018, and all these bands are struggling to make ends meet. And what he should have said was, look, we make plenty of money. We're going to be just fine. But the smaller bands, and what the record industry should have taken note of that and should have tried to lower their prices at the time. They should have got invested into the online technology. I mean, there are so many missed opportunities, and the Metallica, unfortunately, were one of those foot soldiers that missed the whole point, and they took a huge tumble for that. And I think I read an article with Lars Ulrich saying he's still in therapy because of what he did to go into court for Napster.
Isn't he still somewhat unapologetic about it?
Well, I think he still thinks that he's right. And
I mean, is it right?
I think that he thinks that, that his point was right. And, I think a lot of bands today wish that their things were back the old way. But the problem was, of course, the consumer was the one who got screwed the most. And it was just, it was inevitable it was going to short circuit. But that's another thing that I think Metallica took a lot of hard knocks on. So they did. And, my thinking on the whole Napster fiasco, because I mean, let's be real from the beginning, honestly, is Metallica just ended up being the poster boy for the whole thing, and it's really unfortunate because I understand where they were kind of this is our art. Why are you making any kind of free influence on what we're supposed to, I mean, this is our job. And I understood that, but I think all of the anger should have been redirected to the record companies,
the record labels, because what happened to the entire, oh, hey, whenever CDs are more, more popular, then they'll go down in price. Well, they never did.
No, they never did.
It was never redirected to the record labels. Matter of fact, I remember seeing record prices go up.
Yeah, there was.
They, if you thought that they were expensive in 1991, let me tell you about 1999.
Or 1987. I mean, it's like they came out,
right?
And they've always were around $20. Did you ever watch?
It never relented. Did you
ever watch that Tower Records documentary that Tom Hanks' son directed?
No, I haven't seen it yet. No, I still need to see that.
You would love it, and it really. I won't go in because I don't want to take too much time away from what we're working on here. But it's definitely goes into all that stuff and about the whole greed and Tower Records were a huge part of that problem. So definitely check that out. It's a really good documentary. It really kind of nails.
Oh yeah,
the end of an era. But I think why don't we move to one more metal band that I'm going to get some Knox for here, I'm sure.
Ooh.
Here we go. I like
Do it.
Slipknot. I like Slipknot.
Oh.
I like Slipknot.
Whoa.
And I did not think I would, because I mean, I think if you go to any metal site, if you go to Metal Sucks or whatever, there's the infamous what does Corey Taylor think about this? That's a common Facebook comment. I mean, you've catch that a lot, but it's kind of the next joke. Used to be what does Kerry King think? Now it's what does Corey Taylor think? It's kind of because they're outspoken musicians. When Slipknot first came out, I was immediately suspicious. I thought these guys are ripping off Mr. Bungle. They're wearing the goofy masks. They're doing the whole corn thing. I was not impressed at all. I thought they were just goofy and run them off. Then a friend of mine was like, "No, man, it's like you got to check them out. You got forget the masks, listen to their album." I'm like, "No, I'm not going to do it." And then finally, I was listening. Just a few years ago, it was on Liquid Metal on Sirius, and the Psychosocial came on. And I'm like, holy shit, this is a great metal song. This is a really infectious song, and this guy can sing his ass off. It's a really good singer, and he's got a very good vocal range. It's like Mike Patton-esque vocal range. I mean, he can sing his ass off. His range is really impressive. So I'm like, okay, I checked them out. And so I found a couple of CDs at Half Price Books. And I'm like, I don't like every song, but it's like there's some strong, they've got great riffs, good vocals. Some of the disc scratching I could do without. And, the image is very cartoonish, so it's kind of goofy. But as far as in an era where rock music is kind of not getting much play, they're like still a huge act, and I get it, because a few years ago, a friend of mine, she won tickets to see them in Marilyn Manson, another guy who is very much a love or hate guy, but she's like, "Do you want to go?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, sure, I'll go. It's for free." And holy fuck, man, that was a good show. I mean, I was entertained. They had the whole like multimedia thing going on, this weird, disturbing, all this like blurred imagery, and they just, it sounds like, because they got these guys playing like tin cans and, like 3 percussionists, and, it's just this total wall of sound, like a keyboard player, a DJ, and 2 guitarists, so I mean, it's just like a wall of sound. I'm like, okay, I get it. I get why these guys, and I get why they're goofed on, because they're goofed on because of their image. People see them like, where they wear masks and this kind of thing. And
bunch of dudes with masks.
Yeah. But it's like, you'd be awesome. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was going to say, I remember them coming out, and it was such a niche category. I mean, it looked like a bunch of goofballs in masks that were just playing, metal, some sort of hybrid metal that just happened to have, those DJ scratches in it. It was really just, kind of I think it was kind of what was going on at the time. If you think about like Limp Bizkit.
Oh yeah, the whole new metal thing was huge.
And the like, they were all incorporating some sort of like, quote unquote, we have a DJ in our band. Well, your DJ doesn't really do shit.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
You want somebody to scratch records and put on a mask? I'm your man. I can fucking scratch a record up for you. Not a problem.
And to make matters worse, they came in, they were very late to the game, which of course you think, okay, rip off artists, they're just coming in on the tail end of it. But some bands, you don't have to be the most original band to be good. I mean, Stone Temple Pilots were a very derivative band. They got a lot of shit for it. That's another band we probably could talk about. I won't get into it, but I think they were a solid rock band. Scott Weiland was a great vocalist. And I think Slipknot are very much like, they're in that kind of same category where I think they get a bad rap because of how they look and kind of a cheesy, genre, but they do it really well.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say they're my favorite band or all that kind of thing, but I mean, if you get a chance to go see them for free, you'll have a good time. They were fun. I mean,
my only rip on them, and this is just for me personally, because my taste in metal usually drifts a lot darker, deeper, and heavier, is that they weren't heavy enough. And the first album sufficed to an extent, but then I thought, and this was all on the record label, because what happened is they released another song, but it wasn't on the album.
It's always so dumb when they do that.
It was on the reissue of the album.
Ugh, hate that.
So like they released an album, and then they released the album again, let's say 9 months later, with a song that has actually been promoted to the radio. So if you bought the album early on, which at that point not a whole bunch of people had done, but if you had, and then you got that song, I forgot what the single was, because it was really kind of a substantial hit, like "Wait to Bleed" or something like that.
Yeah. That was their first big hit, "Wait to Bleed." Yeah, "Wait and Bleed."
Yeah. So that wasn't on the original pressing of the album. It was on the second pressing of the album.
That's weird.
And the record label, Roadrunner, was kind of in the business of doing that a little bit, and they didn't run CD singles at all at that point. So, but if we want to go back and talk about the Napster thing for a second, that's the reason why Napster happened.
Mm-hmm, that kind of shit
like that, because once again, it's on the record labels, not the artists, but the record labels. So, but Iowa, I found a little bit more acceptable. It really kind of hit some points on me. I think that was the second legit album that they put out. And somewhere along the line, I went to go see them. And I don't remember what the tour was, but it must have been one of those Oz Fests or something like that. And I got to tell you, man, there was a ton of shit going on there.
A ton. Yeah, it's like sensory overload. I mean, it's a lot.
There is a bunch of stuff. I mean, I clocked out early on the show because I knew that I had to be up at work earlier in the morning than I usually had to be. So I only snuck in about half of their show. But let me tell you, chaotic. It was kind of a mess. It made sense, and I don't know if I hit them on a tough night for them or not. It didn't really catch me as much, but I was completely intrigued with the circus that was going on, because let me tell you, it was 6 rings of insanity going on.
Yeah, they put on quite the spectacle.
Yeah, I mean, it was really nuts. And like I said, I wouldn't mind catching them again. I'm not sure if I want to pay for it all that much, but if I was given a ticket to go catch them, I certainly wouldn't mind at least entertaining it at all, because I need to see that. I need to see that again. That was years ago. That was at least 10, 12 years ago.
Well, I think they've gotten better as they've gone on too, because they kind of broke free of, because anytime you join a record label in your new seat, they want to kind of make you a little more cookie cutter to fit in. So they can make them a little more Cornish, a little more, they will make them a little more in that vein. But the more they got, they started playing, they started playing guitar. So remember no new metal band would ever play guitar solos? You remember that? Like we play for the song. It was like, oh, fucking play a guitar solo. Come on, dude. Okay. I like it. Right. I like guitar solos. I like them. So they started playing those. They got more kind of an organic sound, and they were able to be more kind of classic metal in some ways. So I think they're better now. And I get why people think they're stupid. They think they think they're a gimmick, and they think all this stuff. And I totally get it. I know why you never heard them in your life. You would just be like, ugh, I get it. But I tell you, if you listen to him enough times, and if you listen to that guy's voice enough time, he's quite the singer. And I also think he's like pretty sharp politically and has some interesting things to say. He's not your typical meathead, and he makes a lot of, because metalhead's angry because he's always saying that, I don't like my politics and my metal. I always love that response. I don't like people talking about this. Well, you don't like it because you don't agree with it. If you agree with it, you think it'd be great. So, but I think that he's a good front man, So yeah. And I'm not going to go too long on this, but saying I saw Marilyn Manson is another guy is kind of a similar thing who I've always had a soft spot for, but he's also someone who's been a very, Marilyn Manson has always been kind of a lightning rod for love or hate, which I think is just the way he wants it. But I think that
and that's how I am with him, love or hate. Like, hated him at first, loved him for a little while, kind of fell asleep at one of his shows. Of course, the 10 beers before didn't help, but hey, Slayer was on after him, so it was one of those things.
I think
took a nap, saw Slayer. It was, he still. I still think that Manson is trying. It's still trying in a creative way, and I think he should still keep doing what he's doing. I probably won't like a lot of what he does, and that's fine. But I applaud his ability to go outside and be creative for each and every record that he's done. Because nowadays they seem to be so diverse.
Yeah, I think
it's a dartboard. It's like, what do we want this record to sound like, and throw the dart, and let's go with that.
And I think too, a lot of things with Marilyn Manson. I think once he left Trent Reznor, it was a big danger sign because Trent Reznor was really so instrumental in getting their sound. And he was such a huge part of that. And I think that they struggled for a long time to kind of get his sound. But I thought that the one that he did with Tyler Bates, who did the Guardians of the Galaxy and the John Wick soundtracks, the Pale Emperor, was particularly good. Very different, very very like more subdued. Unfortunately, his last album he kind of got more into his old tricks, which is a little more boring to me. But yeah, he's kind of hit or miss, and he really hits hard. But I think he's just for being the kind of guy that people out in the 90s, I always appreciate him for just scaring the shit out of people who were very easily shocked.
I'm all for him offending somebody somewhere.
Exactly. We need more of that.
I support that completely.
We need more of that for sure. The Rock has gotten a little too safe. All right. Well, I think it's time to close it out. We've got one more group here to talk about, and Radiohead. Let's close it out.
Ooh.
Radiohead. Why do
hate?
Yeah. Why do people
hate or love Radiohead?
I think with Radiohead, we're going to get in that same thing with Metallica and with U2, which is different eras that people kind of talk about with Radiohead. But I think what people like about Radiohead, they're another band that are kind of in that weird zone where it's hard to know just what makes them tick. But I think, what is it? Tell us, people, what is it?
I'm gonna go ahead and cut this off. For me, at least. So you have Pablo Honey, and that is what you might just call their 90s. And then everything else after that is the other part of Radiohead. So you're either in the, I know you for yourself, you're a Pablo Honey fan.
I'm the sole idiot who thinks Pablo Honey is one of their best albums.
No.
Yeah, we've covered this in the last episode. How much I like Pablo.
We have, and I'm still okay with Pablo Honey. It's not a go-to for me, but hey, it's still fun. And then we have OK Computer hitting, and it changed everything.
Yeah,
I think
that was a huge high watermark. That was like the album of that year.
Yeah.
And that showed that they had a lot more interesting things in than the people first thought.
Yeah, I think between that and Siamese Dream, you have a head-to-head, the two records. Well, and actually, not to go outside the zone here, I think Dr. Dre's Chronic, all three of those records changed the 90s completely.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
All three of those. But from OK Computer, and then whenever you start jumping past that, then you don't know where exactly Radiohead was going. I mean, their entire scene just jumped all over the place after that. I mean, Radiohead were changing their ideals and their sounds so completely every single album at that point. I mean, we jumped off from Pablo Honey, which was, certainly part of that Brit rock, grunge sort of sound, and then the OK Computer, which, hey, let's be real, that's sort of like their jammy record, There's some jams going on there. It's their prog album. It's their Floyd tribute, whatever.
Yeah, no, very much so.
And then, I'm sorry, I skipped the Bends completely.
Oh, which is
that was bad of me.
Which is
because that's a fantastic album, and that was a good bridge.
Yeah, that was
bridge record for sure.
That was one of those albums that was like, okay, these guys are, they've got more. They have more layers, because Pablo Honey is definitely a kind of a one layer thing, but the Bends was really much like we got some artistes here who are gonna, push the limit. But then Kid A came out, and that was a real divisive album. That
freaked everybody out. That freaked all of them out.
See, I thought I was going to be a bigger fan because I love Aphex Twin, right? I think Aphex Twin is great, but I felt like they were trying to be Aphex Twin, and I was like, I don't know. I'm just
right. Yeah.
Some of it, like I thought Idiotech was great. I love that song, and there was some definitely and Exit. What's that last song on the album? Is it Exit for Film, or is that the last song on OK Computer?
That's on OK Computer.
Yeah, whatever the last song is on Kid A, I like that. I don't hate it, but it was like okay, guitars are no longer our specialty, and that was just kind of a bummer for me because I particularly like their guitar work, and this was very very toned down. And I feel like from that point onward, Radiohead albums were no longer guitar centric, and that for me was just kind of a little bit of a bummer because I really liked their guitar sound. So that's just me being
totally. Yeah, I totally get that because the work of Johnny Greenwood is completely. I mean, whenever you get him on a guitar, he's wow. He's just a bunch of wow. I don't know if you've ever seen him live.
I haven't. I wish as a band I need to see.
Man, he's so dynamic, and he's such an instrumentalist too. And so I honestly think that Kid A, as much as we may think that it was a Tom York driven sound, I really think that Johnny Greenwood was all about, hey, let's totally work in that direction and let me see what I can do, because he was all about theremin and very analog type sounds, the Moogs and what have you. Putting on the guitar every once in a while for, a little. At that point, guitar was just atmosphere. A clink and a clank and somebody else can do the rhythm, but he was all about the lead on everything else. But for Kid A and Amnesiac, I mean, divisive records that really would set the tone for them until today, honestly. I mean, finding people that are all about Radiohead now. I'm not sure if they came to town that they would have a sellout here.
Yeah, I wonder, because I think what happened with Radiohead is they got very, like in Hail to the Thief, that was okay. And I think In Rape was probably their best one they've done since, like, my favorite of like their latter day stuff. But it's a little too, I don't know. It's like, I want to like it more. I wanted to like their last time a lot more, but I found myself.
There's no punch.
Yeah.
There was zero punch.
Zero punch. And I think when my friends and I were joking, we were talking about like they don't say they really have fun making music. I don't know. It's just like I feel like there's it's
like they're miserable doing it.
Yeah, and that's just kind of a drag to me. And maybe and I feel the same way watching Suspiria. Have you seen that yet? Have you seen Suspiria?
I haven't, but I know that Tom does the soundtrack for it.
Yeah,
and he sounds just as miserable as I thought he would.
Yeah, and I was kind of
soundtrack.
I was kind of bummed because to me the Suspiria, the Goblin soundtrack is so great. It's so like lively and very. And this was very somber. I'm like, well, the Suspiria doesn't need to have. I don't know. It wasn't bad, but I thought it's not shit compared to Goblin. Sorry, Tom, but that was Goblin's score is amazing. But
right.
But I think when the people who don't like Radiohead or who get sick of Radiohead or get to know about Radiohead, it's kind of is that kind of feeling that maybe they're a little too cool for school. Maybe they think they're
totally.
They don't want to play.
Absolutely.
They don't want to play Creep live because they're too good for that. It's kind of a snotty people feel like like there's whether it's earned or not. I think a lot of people are like, oh, they're so pretentious. Oh, they're so I even found myself kind of like, oh, come on, guys, just strap on a guitar. I get kind of annoyed with it. So I think with Radiohead, it's like there are people who are so wowed by their artistry and their ambitions and the fact that they do their own thing. But, for some of us, we're like, well, we were there from the ground floor and we kind of like when they used to plug in and rock out and that it's over. And that kind of makes me a little bit sad. I guess that's just kind of where some of the early Radiohead.
If you're still going to a Radiohead show just to hear them play Creep,
yeah, you're going to be sad.
You're in the wrong venue because I won't say that they won't play Creep because I've seen them play Creep, but it's probably been over 10 years.
And forget about Ripcord or anyone wants to play guitar and that kind of stuff. It's just not happening.
Oh yeah.
And I don't even know what they
totally forget that.
Play off the bends. But yeah, I do feel like they just kind of like say, you know what, we're not a rock band anymore. We're something different. And I feel like they become this kind of experimental thing, which works for them. It's like, they're kind of like, we're Sigur Rós, for Sigur Rós with Sigur Rós, kind of a thing.
Right.
And I
you may get high and dry.
Yeah.
From the bends these days. But that may be pretty close to it. I think they have played Street Spirit.
It's a good song.
Within the last year or so, but I mean, we're talking about. I mean, that's. I'm not even sure when the last Radiohead show was. I mean, they didn't come around here for the Moon-Shaped Pool show. At least I don't think so. They did. Well, whatever. It would have been a pretty ambient show, because I think I saw them on that last one, that King of Limbs show, and was fairly okay with it, but was thinking I wish I had something better. I mean, not to say. I mean, it's just that the song selection is so different now, especially within the last 3 albums. And so if you're promoting an album that you're going to play like, 5 to 6 songs off of, and then you start mixing in more recent material, like 2 from the last one and 3 from the one before that, you're not leaving a lot of space for earlier material. Mm-hmm.
Plus, it sticks out like a sore thumb too within what you're doing. It sounds so out of place almost.
Yeah, I start to look at the way that these bands, whenever they're doing tours, what is it that they're playing? How many songs are they typically playing off the album that they're promoting?
Mm-hmm.
And then, because like right now, I had a friend of mine that was asking me about going to see Muse. And I particularly think that the new Muse record is trash. I don't like it at all.
What happened to those guys? They used to be good. They're
I
awful.
don't know.
Their past 2 albums have been terrible.
I don't know.
They're really bad now. It's sad.
But I went to see Muse about a year ago, and where it was a fairly good show, it was still fairly not exactly what I want. So if we take the new album and the last 2 albums, I'm not really interested in the bulk of that. And then whenever you're putting out 6 songs from the new album, 2 from the one after it, and even 1 after that one, well, that's half a set, if you ask me.
Yeah, that's why I can't stand.
And so, I'm out.
That's why I can't deal with Ministry anymore, because I love those guys, but if you see them live now, they play their new album all the way through, then they play the old stuff. It's how they've done the past few tours, and I can't do it.
I saw that.
I'm just like,
saw that. They're playing here this weekend, and the first half of the show is American.
It's a fucking weird
and then
album.
After and that's like 7 or 8 songs at the front of the show, and then the rest of it is, a total of about another 6 or 7 that are older songs, and that's it.
Yeah, I'm like, do a Rape and Honey tour or a Terrible Taste or an NWO tour. I thought American was actually a pretty decent album after the kind of subpar stuff they put out in the past couple of years, but it's really, I don't know how they're going to do it live. It's a strange, weird album. But I think, we're talking about several of the bands we've kind of ended up here being like, well, they're kind of like, a lot of these are love-hate between their earlier periods. And I think Radiohead's the ultimate example of that, the band that you want them to be, they're never going to be there for very long because they're never going to stay there for very long. And I think it's also kind of makes you think, okay, well, I want them to beat this band, but, maybe I also still want to be 25. Maybe I still want, I think it's that thing that like, you can't ever, maybe Queens of the Stone Age will never be that heavy again because they don't have that fire in them, and Nick Oliveri isn't there anymore. Man, they're not going to ever have that, certain bands just, I think the biggest complaint I have with bands as they get older is that they don't rock out as much. It's like, that's just why I adore Killing Joke, because they just keep getting heavier and heavier, which is why I love them so much.
Insane.
But I think with a lot of these bands we're talking about, it's just like, can't you just crank it? Can't you just, and it's just, I don't know if it's just age or, the fact that, they're never going to be what they want. They just don't really care.
The energy level is, it seems to, it seems to have gone down a little bit, or quite a bit. When it comes to Radiohead, it's not that I dislike the new albums all that much. I just don't want half my show that's some ambient piece from Moonshaped Pool.
Yeah.
I want a little bit of that. And it's not that I dislike, Hail to the Thief. I actually liked Hail to the Thief, and some of Amnesiac, but then throw me off and play, half of the Bends or something like that, or at least 2 songs off of that,
mix it up a bit, get your set list to be all over the place and not, and that's what scared me about the Muse show is I don't want to have to sit through dubstep.
The junk that they're rolling out for this new album, much less, I really don't want to watch Moonshaped Pool. I don't. I really don't.
Yeah, and that's kind of like
there's a few songs that intrigue me for a live setting, and maybe a few is being kind of nice, but
it's a sit down album. It's a bedroom album.
Yeah, it's music for airports. Okay.
Yeah, and as much as I love Brian Eno, I don't want to see stand up for an hour and listen to that.
I don't want to see Brian Eno. No, I don't want to see Brian Eno. He's gonna. All I think of with Brian Eno is, well, that's the record that I put on right before I'm trying to wind down to go to bed.
Yeah, go to sleep.
And I love you, Brian Eno, but that's true. I'm sorry.
It's a different venue.
Yeah, that's totally different. So
I think it's really funny you brought up Muse, because that's totally a band we should have had on this list. I can't believe we didn't think about Muse.
It hasn't been more evident than today. I mean, whenever they put out this most recent record, because I had a friend of mine who was like, "Yeah, man, it's not bad." I'm like, "Man, it is absolute trash." I sat through clips, or actually, I have one of those streaming services, and so I could listen to the whole song, but we'll just say that I went through clips, and I was like, "Nope."
Yeah, I heard like 2 songs, and I'm like,
nope. I mean, no. I mean, it just went. I think I did one full song whenever the single was out, and I was like, "Oh my God, are you kidding me? What happened here?"
Yeah, the last album was very similar. It was just kind of like, I don't know.
It was extremely similar. Yeah. And then the one before that wasn't that far off base.
Yeah,
so, don't get me started about Muse.
But,
yeah.
Well,
because we saw them open up for U2, and then I was like, "Oh, we got to see this live show, all just them," and it was fantastic. We saw it like 3 times on that tour, including the U2 show. 3 times on that tour. We saw them at Fort Worth. They came back to Fort Worth, and then we went up to Oklahoma City to see it. Fantastic show all around. It's been absolute crud since.
Yeah, I don't know what. Some bands just hit those walls. I mean, we've talked about several tonight that maybe eventually they'll figure it out. But the big thing I've learned from this,
except for Dave Matthews won't ever fucking figure it out. Shit out.
Dave Matthews is gonna be
he's gonna be the same shit that you got back in 1994. Enjoy it, kids.
Yeah, he just put on a new album not too long ago, Samurai Cop. That's what he said it was called. Named after
a Samurai Cop.
Named after a really, really, really terrible film you can watch on Amazon Prime, which you should.
Terrible name.
Yeah, I know. It's
that's the name of his album.
Yeah.
Samurai Cop.
Yeah, which is on Amazon. You can find it. It's done by the guys from Mystery Science Theater. Rip Tracks do it. It's just really terrible martial arts film. So I'm like, he named some like love song Samurai Cop. It just shows you Dave Matthews in a nutshell. It's like what the. I can't.
What a terrible name for your record. It's Samurai Cop.
It's like he's not even
a white guy. Some white guy from Sheboygan or something.
Mm-hmm. He's not even trying. He's like, yeah, Samurai Cop. I looked it up. I watched it on Amazon last night. I'll call the movie that.
God.
Oh man.
Wow.
Well, I think we've done it. We can definitely do a part.
I think we have done it.
we can definitely do a part 2 at some point, and maybe bands like Coldplay can one day get our wrath. But perhaps next time we'll do solo artists that you love or hate, or maybe we'll do the lifetime gigs that we have to see or haven't seen. We got several different cool options. We'll do one of those 3.
Yeah.
So thank you again.
Always good stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on.
As always, we always have a good time talking about this, and we'll do this again soon.
All right, awesome.
All right, that wraps up this week's episode. Stay tuned. Next week, we've got something very special planned for the holidays, so be sure to tune back for that. Until then, take care and talk to you soon.